Hello and welcome to NCSY Pulse. We are powered by NCSY Alumni, and it's good to be back. We had a little hiatus post-Pesach, and great to be back on the show. And I have an awesome guest today. Really, really excited. We have Rabbi Moshe Mo Isenberg, good friend of mine, old friend of mine from our old days at the Yeshiva, Skokie Yeshiva. Mo, welcome to NCSY Pulse.
Thank you very much. Do you still call it the Yeshiva, like when you're out in the wild?
So it's funny, if I know somebody knows what I'm talking about, I call it the yeshiva. But when I'm telling people, oh, I'm from Minnesota, but I went to high school in Chicago, I say I went to Skokie.
Yeah. Oh, you say you just wimp out of the whole thing.
Because I don't know that everybody knows automatically what yeshiva is.
Right. I get it. I remember being in KBY. It was like the first time I ever experienced someone in like out of Chicago, really, and they had no problem picking on me and telling me that, like, no, we could tell you're not from here. Yeshiva? What's a yeshiva? But you know what? I can't complain. Thank God it was fine. It was fine. And we proudly wear that badge. There are some places that also say yeshiva, but not many.
Not many. And when I say the yeshiva, people are like, you go to the yeshiva? I'm like, no. I went to a yeshiva. The yeshiva. It's like a proper noun.
That's right.
Kind of thing.
That's right. Well, I'm a big fan of the podcast, so thank you for having me on. It really is. It's my privilege.
It's my pleasure, and I actually wanted to tell you really quickly that I was thinking about you and your whole family on Purim, because your dad spoiled me forever. Your dad, who used to lay in the Megillah
Sure.
Esther on Purim,
Yep.
At the yeshiva always,
Yep.
and that was the best I've ever heard. And since those days, everybody, like literally everyone, and I'm sorry if I have friends who are listening who are like, but I lay in the Megillah. Rabbi Isenberg was the best, and I miss it because he was
Still
awesome.
Still is.
He's still laying it?
Oh yeah, he still lanes it. He doesn't lane it so much for a minion per se, but he'll lane it for us, and he'll lane it at home, and he'll be good. And if you can get him, he sometimes will even do it in voices. Where when it's Queen Esther's line, he'll go like this, and Haman's line, and that's very cool.
I don't know if he still does this, but he used to do this thing where the last three psukim he would do in like a Pesach tune.
Yes, absolutely he does. Yeah,
I loved it. And whenever I don't hear that, I'm kind of like, you guys are doing it wrong because
and he does the Seuss like a neigh, like
Seuss.
But I think it's an argument as I think. Menachem Kirshner, Neil Kirshner, who is Rabbi Greenland's brother-in-law, by the way. I think he does that too, and I'm not sure if my dad got it from Neil or Neil got it from my dad. Honestly, I don't know, but it's a good one. That's also a good one that they do. So,
amazing. Okay, so I'm glad that we have our ancestry all set here.
That's right.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention your brother Yehuda, who was in my class, the Yeshiva. So shouts to Yehuda if you're listening to this.
That's right.
But Mo, let's talk a little NCSY. So you've been involved for a long time with NCSY at this point, with a break in between. So give us a little bit of your secret origin story. How'd you get started, and tell us what you're doing now?
Yeah, so it's actually it's a little bit of a break professionally, but even during that time, I can discuss it. Even during that time, it wasn't really a break because I was involved on the lay leadership side. But in 2000, I was hired at NCSY to run the at the time it was the Skokie chapter in Skokie, Illinois. I live in Chicago, and so I was running the Skokie chapter. The Skokie chapter was very, very wide. It was Skokie, it was Chicago, it was Evanston, it was all the suburbs that basically weren't out north, and also I was in charge of running the Minyan, and I lived about 30 minutes away from the Minyan, so I would be walking every Shabbos to the NCSY office. That's still where I am actually right now. Actually, where my office is currently is Mizrach, where the Minyan used to be. The Minyan has obviously since closed down, and they built offices there. But this is where it was. I would go pick up the Entenmann's donuts for Kiddush and make sure the cholent was ready and all that jazz. And so that was my job for basically the first year of working in NCSY. It was after that year that a new regional director came on board, and his name was Rabbi Micah Greenland. And
familiar.
Right after he became regional director, my role basically changed, and I was running junior NCSY, which I thought was fantastic, and I kind of revamped the way junior NCSY was seen, and junior NCSY really became in the Midwest and beyond. It really became fantastic. We instituted raffles, and we instituted chapters and chapter advisors and directors, and we started paying people to run juniors, and it became a real gavra in and of itself, sort of, so bria b'fnei atzmo, if you will, and
Sure.
it really grew, and it was fantastic, and it became clear that juniors became a feeder to seniors. The juniors was 6th, 7th, and 8th, but we also took 5th graders, and it was great. I did that basically for the next 6, 7 years. At that point, I was moving from juniors to my next job. I think was the chief communications officer. I think,
Nice.
which is what I was doing when I was in charge of marketing, and we were doing all the marketing again just for the Midwest. I might be flipping some stuff, but we did that. At that point, I had a radio show, a real radio show, on an actual
Really?
AM dial, which covered all of Chicago and the northern suburbs. We actually got a grant for that from the local federation, called it J-Teen Radio. That was a lot of fun. But that was also like, I understood what it meant to be like a radio host. It was like every Sunday you had to schlep down to the station, like 5 o'clock, like, no matter
Yep.
what you're doing, like if you want the radio time, that's what you have to do. But it was a lot of fun. And then became associate regional director. And then as Micha kind of moved to the national role, so then I became executive director of Midwest, and then Donnie Schwartz became regional director, and together we kind of ran the region as a whole, and I kind of focused on the business end of things and fundraising, and was really enjoying it. But at that point, so that was 16 years after I started, about
Wow.
2016, I had an opportunity to go into business, which I took, and I did that for about 5 years. But basically, as soon as I left, Donnie put me on the local board, so I was on the board there, which was great. Was be able to see things from a different bird's eye view, which was great. And after that, I kind of sold out of that business 5 years later, which was nice. And then just figuring what was the next move, literally got a phone call from Murray Greenland, who said, "I heard you might be looking for stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe. What do you got?" And he said, "How would you like to come back and work in a national capacity, doing this, that, and the other?" And I said, "Sure." And so right on, my title is National Director of Strategic Partnerships, which I'm really enjoying that role. And it's a lot of fundraising, which I enjoy, and a lot of trying to figure out how different organizations could partner with each other and help us to grow, help them to grow, and open new chapters, and really find ways to really help on a grand scale. And I try to help not only NCSY, but really if we can help through the OU or wherever else we can be, and put our footprint to help Klal Yisrael. That's what I'd like to do. So that's really where we're up to right now.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
how did you get started in the beginning? Because I know you've got this really storied, career in NCSY.
Yeah, so-
and juniors and advisor, but what was it that brought you in?
Yeah, so it's a good question. There's a picture of me somewhere that I heard about. I haven't seen it yet, but there's a picture of me somewhere of me in the middle of a circle, like lying on my blankie, because my parents were advisors. I've not seen this picture, but
Really?
that's the story. Yeah. And if I have found, I don't have it, but I actually have seen this. There is a program with my parents' name as advisors on there. So I was a baby when I first came to an NCSY Shabbat town. That is proven. But as a teenager, I was not, going into the yeshiva. I was not really NCSY was not my thing. And so didn't go to an NCSY summer program or anything like that. I was a Yeshiva Zakai's guy all day, and so we did that. It was really I was going out with this girl, and I wanted to get engaged. And my mother, Allah Shalom, told me that if I want to get engaged, I needed a job. And I was in college in the base medrash in Skokie in the morning, and Loyola in the evening. And I went to the base medrash, and I said to my buddies, I want to get engaged. I need a job. What do you got? And one of the guys, I think it was Donald Berman, said to me, you got to work for NCSY. There's a guy, he's leaving. You could pick it up. You could become this chapter advisor. And I said, I don't know anything about NCSY. He says, well, the girl you're dating, Devorah, she actually is an advisor. So it might actually work out good. I said, I really don't know anything about NCSY. Ari Shabbat, talked to Ari Shabbat, and so but the end game was getting engaged, so it didn't really make a difference. So I actually called at the time Patricia Smith, who was the secretary at the time, and I probably called her every single day until I got in touch with AY, who was the regional director at the time, and then he said, well, here's the job, I'll take it. And so I still have the pay stub. It was August 7th, 2000 was my first pay stub, and August 21st, 2000, I got engaged.
Outstanding.
And I figured it would be a 2-year, 1-year, 5-second thing, and 25 years later, da-da-da-da-da-da. So
that's awesome. That's a great story, though.
It is a story. I mean, you never know. You never know what's up the Eibishter's sleeve. But the Eibishter is geet, and that's the main thing to remember. So that's I enjoy. I listen. I love where I am. I really do. I like it. I love it. I love what I do, and I think that I work with fantastic people, and I think that they're great. I think that we have a wonderful, wonderful team. It's very expansive. I unfortunately don't know every single person. Necessarily, but it's because we're so expansive that we're in so many different cities and so many different chapters. I think last count we were in JSU is in 38 states or something now. I mean, we're just all over the place. So it's fantastic. But the best part of what I do is that I'm able to go around and meet other people who really there's an affinity towards what we do because. From a donor, even no matter religious, not religious, and a lot of my people that I have relationships with who are donors are not religious, because the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing, which is they want to see the next Jewish generation. They want to see, continued and Dore Doros, and they want to see that Jewish kids have a safe space to be, and especially post October 7th, that has taken on a brand new meaning. And so I'm really proud of the people who have who've donated and what I call our partners. I'm very outspoken on LinkedIn about that. We have a lot of partners who really have spoken up and have really don't care about what seat they have at the table. They just want to help. They just want to make sure that we succeed, and they want to help us in any way possible.
I love it. And you're the perfect guy for that because you're a natural, partnership crafter. You're a relationship builder. You're somebody, like you said, you have friends and partnerships and relationships with people all across the Jewish spectrum. But it's funny, maybe there's a link between what you're doing now to what you were doing, in the very beginning and starting juniors and sort of this entrepreneurial, side to all the things that we did. But clearly you didn't stick to what some people do in NCSY, not to say that one is better than the other, but you didn't kind of settle and say, okay, I'm going to do this in the organization. And then that's what you did for 20 years, but you've made big changes along the way and expanded. How did you figure out that this was the direction you wanted to go? Because as you said, you even, kind of paused, switched sides, and then you came back. How did you end up where you are now? And what was it about this role that kind of brought you back?
Yeah, it's a great question. The main thing I could tell you is I remember very clearly when Rabbi Greenland said to me, he drew a big X over my associate regional director title and said, "You're not going to be associate regional director anymore." Huh? And it kind of changed my title to whatever it was, or when he said executive director and you're going to be focusing on fundraising, and I was like, no, huh? Like, these are things I didn't want to do, adamantly did not want to do, and he said, no, you're gonna be good at it, and I said, I really don't like you anymore. This is not. I thought we were cool, but we're not. I mean, I remember these conversations. These were hard conversations for me hard pills for me to swallow, and it's not like I wasn't upset about it or looking. I mean, it was like I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that. At this point, I love fundraising. I love it. I mean, he was 100% correct. So I think that you kind of rely on, where again, I say it, but I mean it. You kind of rely where the Abishter takes you.
Right.
Where Hashem is gonna kind of take you, and the people He's gonna put you with, He's putting you there for a reason, and so you kind of gotta go with the flow. And one of the reasons I kind of left was because I went to fundraising. As a fundraiser, I met a donor. The donor was the one who down the line asked me if we wanted to go in business together, which we did.
Wow.
There's a lot of things that, happen that if you look at it from a, the zoom out kind of thing, you'll see, oh, I get it. And, but if you had it laid out before you, you wouldn't be able to move.
Right.
It would be too, and that's something my uncle once told me, because I was once saying something and I said, I wish I knew how it was going to play out. And he said to me, no, you don't. And I said, yes, I do. And he said, no, you don't. I said, why not? He said, because you wouldn't be able to move. And I didn't understand it, but I understand it, obviously better as you get older. He's right. You wouldn't be able to move. Once you see how things, play out later, you can then talk about these things. But, I think that there's a lot to say about I didn't know my parents were involved in NCSY.
Right.
I had no idea. Right. So these are things that they come out, afterwards. And I think that that's kind of like, I don't want to say the joke, but it's kind of like the confidence that you have to have and the emunah you have to have. It's like, okay, I get it. Let's see how it goes. And if it doesn't work out, so then, okay, like that's, if God gets you to it, God gets you through it. That's the way it kind of is. So, but a lot of Akar Satov to obviously to everybody, whether it was getting me on all the positions that I took, or whether it was that partner who got me out of it and taught me a lot about the business world and those types of things, and had an exit strategy for me to leave, and all these things kind of played out where, okay, now it's your time to go. Now what are you gonna do? I don't know. All of a sudden, phone rings. Michael again. So these are things where it's like you kind of just got to look up and smile and go, you. So and so I think that's there is no real reason of well, how did you get from here to there to there to here? I really didn't want to do it. I liked juniors, but to your point, one of the stories that I remember very clearly, and I'm gonna change the name, but I remember there was this kid Mikey who was a junior in NCSY, who later became, he wasn't really involved in this and that, but he always came, and then he became a senior 12th grader, and he said to me in 12th grade that the reason he kept coming to Shabbat Matones was because when he was a junior in NCSY, junior NCSYer, and he would get off the bus, I was there saying, hey, Mikey, hey, Rachel, hey, I knew the names. And that was it.
Really?
And he said that if you knew the name, if you knew my name, that meant something. So to him, that was something. There's another guy who now is a big, they just made Aliyah, him and his family, and he told me he remembers the conversation. He was he became he was learning in Kollel, and he became a big he started his own organization, very well respected guy. Told me he remembers we once had a conversation about tzitzis. Okay, I believe it. I told him why I don't wear my tzitzis out, and what I say. Okay. So these are things that it's interesting because you realize very quickly, and maybe you don't realize till way later, but you realize that this is the real stuff, and you're having an impact, and you're not. This is it's not a commodity that you're selling. You aren't selling widgets. It's not you're not selling experiences. Even when we run summer programs, we are not a summer program provider. We're not tour guides. At the end of the day, is what we have. What we have in NCSY is life changing. It really is, and it allows a kid, a teenager, to to really build their own self-confidence and their Jewish pride in a way that you just can't build it any other way. You really
Yeah.
can't.
No, absolutely. And I love what you said about, kind of going the road that God paves for you, and how important it is. I'm curious because, you also mentioned that you went into business with one of your donors.
Yeah.
And that must have been like a really interesting opportunity.
Yeah.
But, the donor position, which you kind of like flipped around a little bit when you were on the board, is that they can come from a place of, we're not in the trenches, we're not in the everyday. And sometimes we get very swept up in the everyday. It's very easy, as you know, working at NCSY, to get swept up in the moment, in the program, this kid, that kid, this Shabbaton or that program, become sort of a singular focus for us, which is great because we're super dedicated and focused. On the other side, a donor can take a bird's eye view and say, well, wait a minute, did you ever think of this? Or did you ever consider, trying that? Did you ever have a time where a donor stepped in and kind of like really shook your reality and said, hey, step back. What do you think of this? And you were like, whoa. That's out there. I'm like, holy cow. I never thought of this before.
Well, I think 4G started because of that. I think
Really?
I think NCSY 4G was a donor who pointed out an issue that in Chicago that was a real issue, where there were girls who were in a all girls high school who didn't want to participate or couldn't participate in a co-ed program with girls and boys in the same program, coming to the same Shabbaton, and said, listen, but our girls need something. They need some inspiration. There really is nothing for them. And so what are we gonna do? And that's how the program 4G really started. And it really is. It's a huge monster of a program now. So when you talk about the concept of where did this come from, this was a donor coming to us and saying, listen, I already give you money, and but here's something that my own kid could benefit from. And a lot of times, you see it when I'm on the board of my kid's school, right? And I see it like with my own kid's school. Like, you'll go and you'll see, you can identify a problem with your own child very easily. Yeah. Right. And you say, oh, the teacher did this. And then, I always say like there's definitely a Eurydice Adoros with regard to like whose fault things are. Right. Like, if I did something bad in school, it's my fault. But it's like my kid did something bad in school. Well, it's the school's fault.
Yeah.
So it's like, so that's like the way things kind of are. But like here's like, you can identify things that I think are that you just can't see. Part of it is because you're running every day, but also, part of it is, is the customer always right? Well, yeah, the customer is always right, but there are certain things that we won't do in NCSY. Right. So within the boundaries of what we will do, there is, we will do whatever if there's a need for it, if there's kids for it. For example, if we need to start a 4B program, which some have, not calling it 4B, but some regions have had a boys only program, then they'll do it, and it's been great. So they're summer programs, another example of kids that wanted to do something. I don't think NCSY is afraid of trying something to see if it works. I think that they're smart enough. We're smart enough to know that if it isn't working, then it's not working, and you kind of move on. But for the most part, our job is to be there for the kids and the families. So, the Jewish family experience, which is a massive idea. I don't think there's any other Hebrew school like it in America that's run out of Buffalo Grove, Illinois, is something that is, again, that's started because the Hebrew school movement was dying. The Sunday Hebrew school movement was dying. So Mashi Polstein, who runs it here, had this idea of doing, kids coming with their parents, and parents, learning with someone else at the same time the kids doing it. Became a whole family thing, and they offer bar bat mitzvah, and those kids eventually would be feeders into NCSY, and it's been great. JSU the same thing. JSU became this idea of, well, how are we going to get these kids? Well, they're in public school, and the funny thing is, it doesn't really matter if those kids, these kids might be NCSYers, they may not be NCSYers, but the bottom line is we're there for them. So it's nice for us to be able to say, oh, there is that need. Thank you for pointing it out, and we can do it. And I think that one of the probably the best story was, and this is a great story, is there was a girl who went to who was eating Friday night dinner at her friend's house. The girl was not a religious girl, and the father said Friday night, so okay, you'll come tomorrow Shabbos lunch. And the girl said, I can't come Shabbos lunch. What do you mean you can't come Shabbos lunch? I'm working. What do you mean you're working? Shabbos, what do you mean you're working? Come to my house. What do you mean you're working? You sleep over, you come to my house. No, I'm working. I need the money. What do you need the money for? Because I want to go to seminary.
Yep.
Huh? So the father said right there, you're going to come to my house Shabbos lunch. And that's your new job. Come to my house for every Shabbos with my daughter, who you're friends with. And I'm going to cover your seminary. And
wow,
that's what happened. And from that, there was a phone call made, and to us in NCSY, Rabbi Greenland, and the challenge was, no kid should ever feel that they have to work to be able to get to seminary. How much more money or yeshiva? How much more money do we have to raise? And the figure was given, and for the last 3, 4, 5 years, we've been raising it because we have to make sure that these guys do it. So where did that concept come from? This donor who had this concept because he had this conversation. Now, if the donor keeps it to themselves and doesn't happen and doesn't care, this is a partner. This is why they aren't donors. This is why they're partners. Donors write you a check and say goodbye and never talk to you again. Donors give you a check once for something and don't give you a check another time. We don't have donors. We really do have partners. People who really, really care. They care about JSU or 4G or NCSY or the OU. They care about what we're doing. They want to be involved, and so they want the help, and they appreciate what we do, and that is something that is gold. And when you go to them and you say, you know what, okay, would you speak to our kids? They're real partners when they say, no, you don't want me to speak. But when you push and push and you say, no, I really do, because this is the story that I think is really impressive. A lot of times, no, really. And they're not, in business, they are sharks, right? But in boardrooms, they could kill it. Put it from a bunch of teenagers, right? But once you get them going, they're fantastic. And we've had some kids speak with some of our donors, and they are just, just hooked on every word. And it is awesome to see, because they look up to these folks, and whether again, doesn't matter if they're religious, not religious, they're Jewish people who mean a lot. We've had them. One of my favorite probably speeches or whatever was when we had them speak. We had the owner of the Chicago Bulls who spoke to we have a relationship with him. I made a relationship with him. How did I get a relationship with him? Through the business world. And I told him what I was doing now we have a relationship with him, and I asked him if he would speak to teenagers, and he said, okay, if you want me to. And I said, yeah. Next thing I know, we are sitting in the United Center, which is where the Bulls play, in his family private dining room. Okay. Wow. And if you're a sports fan, you'll appreciate this, right? There are basketballs everywhere, signed by everybody, right? It's meaningless to these guys because they have, but I mean, it's fancy, it's whatever. And the dining room is connected to the suites, and these 20 kids are listening to this guy talk about anti-Semitism as an owner of a sports team, and what it means when Kanye wanted to rent the United Center to do a performance and what he had to do, and how do you say no, but how do you say yes? It's a business, da 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 da. It's fascinating. And he
Wow.
brought in kosher food, and then he said, okay, guys, it's 7:30, game time. The kids didn't want to. They didn't want to go see the game. They wanted to,
Wow.
and then all the kids went through the hall to the owner's suite to watch the game, in the United Center, which is connected. And who's sitting in the suite? Tony Kukoc
No way.
is sitting right there. And
Wow.
so these kids, a couple of these kids knew who he was, not everybody, but I'm like, oh, jeez, damn you. And and just like this is you make these relationships, and the owner was blown away by. He said, I think these kids are fantastic. So let's do this again. Yeah, let's do this again.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's this type of thing where like you realize that these donors and is that a donor? Sure. If he donates his time, donates a suite to the Bulls game. It's not always about money. It's about what you're giving over, and it's inspiring. And kids again. This was 8 months ago, and I saw a kid 2 weeks ago who I didn't even recognize, who told me, "I know you. You're the guy who got us into that Bulls in the Bulls game." And I'm like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "I still remember what he said." And so there are things that like again, you try to do what you can, and then at the end of the day, hopefully it's something that makes an impact that will last.
Wow. That's incredible and good for you. And I'm not just saying that's incredible because I'm a huge sports fan and that's a great sports story, but that's a great story.
Yeah. It is a great story, and it's wild.
So Mo, you're like glowing. You're telling these stories and you're going story to story to story, which is awesome. But you're glowing. You're so excited to tell these stories. It's so much fun for me on this side just to kind of like sit back and first time caller, long time listener. I'm gonna hang up and listen now, right? I'm just gonna like listen. I could listen to you go on and on.
Sure.
You're pitching the organization, you're pitching the people, you're pitching stories and relationships.
Right.
If you're going to go out and say, like, let's say that someone's going to come up to you and say, oh, Mo Isenberg, you work for NCSY. Yeah, sure. I'm interested potentially working for NCSY.
Working. Okay.
What do you tell this guy or girl? What's the message to somebody who says, that job is intriguing. The organization's amazing. The people are first rate. What do you tell somebody who's maybe interested in going this direction career-wise?
Well, I mean, the thing, it's a great question. I mean, the thing to really understand is that no matter what role it is, right, whether it's in a programmatic role or a fundraising role, it's really kind of all the same. And that is, if you want to have a real impact, if you want to be a real change maker, a real difference maker, you want to see it in real time, right? And you want to really be on the forefront of what's going on in the Jewish world, and be at the front lines, no matter what position you have in NCSY. This is the only organization to be a part of. There are lots of wonderful organizations that do wonderful things, but if you are concerned about the future of Klal Yisrael, which clearly begins with the youth of today. If you have teenagers or young kids of your own, or you have siblings, or you have friends, or nieces, nephews, cousins, and you are concerned about what's going on, or you've seen it on television, or you see what's going on in colleges, and you don't know what's going on in high schools, which is 100 times worse, but it's just not as attractive of a story, right? If you see all of these things, and you want to say, how can I help? You want to really get into it, right? This is an opportunity for you to really say, no, listen. You can be here. You can be creative, right? You have the ability to be creative. You have the resources that you basically need. They're unlimited, right? And that's not to say your salary is huge and you're going to get paid, the millions of dollars, right? But it means, look, the NCSY Pulse is a great example, right? John, you could speak to this, right? This is your idea, right?
Yeah.
and it's come to fruition, right? This is part of the leeway, if you will, of things that you do, right? On my end, I would say, it's if I have a potential donor in somewhere, I go.
Right.
It's kind of these things where, like, we're gonna try these ideas because we know that that they could work, and it could be a tremendous ROI for the organization. And so at the end of the day, if you think that our latte and learning at a Starbucks isn't the right program, and you want to try something new, or your annual fundraiser as a normal regular dinner isn't working, and now you want to do a Top Golf event, for example, or something like that, and that's the way to do it. Okay, so is it a results driven organization? Sure, of course it is. Right? You want to be able to show, look how many kids we brought through the organization, and how many kids grew, and how many kids came to one thing and then the other thing, how many kids went to summer programs, and how many we want to be able to do that for sure. How many dollars raised? Of course, these are easy, measurable things, but because they're easy and measurable, it's also something that is exciting to be a part of, because it's very like, any way you can do it, right? If there's a way that you can get there, so then get there. And there's something else that I think is important, which is that I've had conversations recently with people who are in the program world, who at the end of the day, everybody needs to fundraise. I'm not. By the way, I'm not in charge of anybody. Okay, but everybody should fundraise. And people have said to me, I can't fundraise. I'm not fundraising, right? And I say to them, and John, I'll use your name if you don't mind. I say, John,
Sure.
oh, what do you mean you can't fundraise? I said, John, what was your last Shabbaton, right? You run, let's say you run, I don't know, pick a city, right? Minnesota NCSY, right? So you run Minnesota NCSY, right? John, you run Minnesota NCSY, yeah, okay. Well, when was your last Shabbaton? It was a month ago. How many kids did you take? I took 30 kids, okay. Took them on a bus? Yeah. Where'd you take them? Middle of Camp Shy in Lake Delton, Wisconsin. Okay, how many of those kids, 30 kids, were new? 20. I said, John, yeah. When did you meet these kids? I just met them, a month ago. I said, John, let me explain something to you. You just met 20 new kids. Somehow, you got them on a bus to go with you a few hours, or 8 hours, or 10, whatever the amount of time is, and their parents trust you, and the kids trust you, teenagers, who could do anything they want over the weekend. You've sold them on this, and now they're with you, and now they're going, and now they spent an incredible weekend, and they had a great time, and now somehow you've signed them up for something else, and you can't fundraise? I said, fundraising is easy. I don't want anything to do with what you do. Your job's the hard job, and right. once you kind of put it in those terms, right? It's just kind of like that mental block of like, you I don't know, I guess that's true. Like I kind of did the hard work, so you kind of got to get over it. I remember the first fundraising meeting I ever had. I was a wreck. I was nervous. I didn't know what to do. And the guy, I still tell him this because I see him all the time. He's a neighbor. And he was not easy on me. A very nice guy, just wasn't easy on me. Asked me a lot of questions, and I had the opportunity to totally lie. And I didn't. I said, I don't know the answer. And he said, who does know the answer? And I said, this guy. And he said, great, let's call him. And we called him. And we got on the phone, and the guy said the answer, and that was it. And we went back and forth. And he gave me the biggest donation he had ever given to NCSY that was that day.
Wow.
And the following day, I was nervous because I saw him. We're kind of neighbors. We live in the same neighborhood. Right. And I always thought that every time I passed him, I would be like, gave me money. But then I realized, and this took a little bit of time, a couple of weeks or whatever, and then I realized, he's not giving me money. He's giving the organization money.
Right.
Right? And so we are not the same type of people who are sitting on a corner and saying, oh, I need the money or whatever. This is an organization that has money. So for people who this is kind of not what you asked, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Sure.
For people who are, toying with the fundraising world or interested in that sort of thing, or wondering, is there fundraising involved in the job? I would say that you might not be on paper. There might not be. but the fundraising aspect is something that will help your career in general, and to understand that, like, no, this is even if you just teed up the people, and and someone from the organization, like me or somebody else, came in and was able to meet with somebody, that's another advantage to having a national office. I think also is that you do have people with a tremendous support staff. There's an obvious advantage to having the OU. You have, and that I would say that also to anyone who's thinking about coming as well, is that you don't understand what it means to have the OU. You really don't. I do. You don't. And that's what I would tell them, is that if you've never worked in any other organization or been on a board of any other organization, which I have been, you don't understand what it means.
Right.
And to be able to have dedicated people who do this, that, or the other, whether it's a payroll thing, or a legal thing, or an HR thing, or a can I do this, can I do that, or an IT team, right? Or whatever it, you just don't get it, right? So these types of things, the infrastructure that's there is Shane Kamo, right? It's really like nothing else. And so I don't think that you're going to find, and Baruch Hashem have been involved with a lot of different organizations in some capacity. You're not going to find another place that is like that.
Amazing. Mo, you've been so generous with your time, and thank you so much. But
I'm a sucker for a podcast.
Hey, listen, me too. I love it. That's how I got started in this to begin with. But so you've done a lot. You've been very successful. You're full of sage wisdom. But I know that somewhere along the line, things maybe did not go exactly according to plan. Maybe there was a time where, you had everything laid out just perfectly. And sometimes our plans don't go the way we hope. And sometimes
Gang auf der Glei, as Mr. Soften would say in English at the Yeshiva, yes.
Yes, right. Exactly. So tell us, is there a time where I don't want to use the term you screwed up, but maybe there's a time you screwed up, or maybe there's a time that there's a plan that just kind of like kablooey in the middle? Because sometimes...
there's on the programmatic side, there's obviously times where events, go a little haywire, and you have to kind of adapt. But I think for me, it's really fundraising where those things really happen, where you are confident that there is a donation that you really think you're going to get, and you think you have the right ask. And then when you make that ask, you don't get laughed out of the room, but you get awfully close to being laughed out. Oof. And you realize that, like, that wasn't the right ask. And so what do you do with that? So I've learned to kind of listen and adapt before I make that ask, right? You kind of have to listen to the and start that conversation, so that you're gonna go, and you don't know if you're gonna give the red folder or the blue folder, right? And you have them both, and you're talking to the guy, and you're gonna say, I was, it's so interesting about colors. Colors are fantastic, and he's gonna say, yeah, and the donor will say, and this happened, but I'm obviously using red and blue instead of the real thing. And the guy said to me, so do you get any money from red? And I said, and I could have said yes, and I could have said no, and instead I took a parv answer, and I said, red's kind of interesting. Yeah, they're the worst. Red's just the worst. And I right then knew this guy's getting the blue folder, right? So because red's not going to help anybody, right? So if not a fan of red, you keep the red, right? So there are things that you have to learn to adapt, and also you have to understand that, like, this is you're gonna be fine. Like, the organization is gonna you keep doing what you have to do, and you keep on keeping on, and you're gonna be able to get it. You ask a guy for let's say $10,000, and you know that he can. And this is what I love. I know he can give it.
Right?
No, you don't. You have no idea he can give it. Like, this is what bothers me about a lot of things that we assume when it comes to donations, right? You have no idea. I have no idea. You have no idea what I'm capable of giving. I have no idea what you're capable of giving. And therefore, how am I supposed to guess what that guy's capable of giving? Right? Because of his house, because of his car, because of he gave one donation or he gave 100 donations to this. I have no idea. You have no idea. So how can I possibly say that I made the right ask of somebody? Because I looked at his 990, or I looked at the book of life that the Federation puts together. I know that what he's capable of. I don't know. I don't know. You do your best. You take a best educated guess based on all of those things, and you hope that you hope that you hit it. And so some of these times you'll get it fine. And I think probably the greatest thing that could happen, which Baruch Hashem happened this past year twice, was when a donor who gives a large amount of money said to me before I even went to them, said to me, I'm in for next year. Right? I didn't even go to them yet.
That's awesome.
I'm in for next year. Now maybe that wasn't great because I didn't get to ask them for more. But on the other hand, I look at it as that's amazing, right? I'm in for next year. You saved me the whole conversation. So I mean, these are things that are like really, you've built that relationship already where it's like this is great, and I think that it's a wonderful thing. But it doesn't always go like that. And I every year, every meeting, I schwitz, and every meeting, it doesn't matter how much you're asking for. I have no idea how it's going to go. It's just. You hope for the best, but yes, it goes haywire, and there's a no. By the way, sure, we could say a no means not yet. I guess I don't look at a no as a not yet. I look at a no as a no. But what did I learn? It might be a no, but what did I gain from that meeting? Like did I say something wrong? You can't edit. This podcast can be edited, right?
Yep.
But you can't edit what you've said. To in a meeting, to an organ, to a donor, to a person, what you say, you said.
Right.
So you have to kind of be like, I shouldn't have said that, right? That you can go back and you could learn and you can rethink how you do that to the next person,
right?
And then you correct it. So a no is just a way for you to realize, and just the opposite. A yes is something where you can be like, that was the right move. You know what I mean? And so I should do that again.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah. Mo, this has been so much fun. Thank you
Likewise.
so much.
You're amazing.
Last words of wisdom you want to share before we sign off here?
No, I mean, I guess I always have words of wisdom. I would just say, I would just say, passion is the key. Really, yeah. No matter what you do, no matter what it is, you be passionate about it, because passion is the most important thing. If it comes through and you're excited about it and you can scream it from the rooftops, you're going to be successful no matter what you do.
I love it. Mo, thank you so very much. And everybody, thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at NCSY Pulse, on YouTube at NCSY Pulse. And you can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Mo, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
You got it.